There's a particular kind of nostalgia, not for a specific cartoon, but for the feel of an era when parents ran around stores in a panic hunting down the next monster in a ball. Bakugan was exactly that kind of phenomenon, a full-blown industry that at its peak wrecked family budgets across the globe. Ask a kid today who Dragonoid is, and at best you'll get a blank stare. How did a title that moved billions collapse into a, oh yeah, that was a thing, over 15 years? Let's break it down. The story didn't start with a cartoon idea, but with one guy's observation of a toy store shelf. Aldrich Saussure spotted a gap in the market, figures hidden inside a ball that pop open when you throw it, a mechanic nobody else had. He pitched the concept to Spin Master, and the technical and creative polish was handed to Japan's Sega, who turned the simple toy into a full-fledged card game with its own elemental system and internal logic. Here's the key detail. The actual game rules were so overloaded that even hardcore fans never fully figured them out. In practice, Bakugan sold not as a playable game, but as pretty collectible balls, which is exactly why collectors' prices today make grown adults twitch. Starting in 2006, the franchise took off, first in Canada, then worldwide. And this is where the classic 2000s formula kicked in. It's not the cartoon selling the toy, it's the toy demanding a cartoon be built around it. In April 2007, the series from TMS Entertainment premiered, and this is one of those rare cases where a product built to sell toys accidentally turned out to be a genuinely well-written story. Funny enough, in Japan itself, Bakugan barely made a dent. They already had plenty of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! In the West, though, it unexpectedly became the kind of title that later spawned its own imitators. Season 1, 52 episodes, a self-contained story about two worlds colliding. Cards holding mysterious creatures fall to Earth, a teenager named Dan builds an entire game system around them, and it slowly comes out that something much bigger is behind the kid's hobby. What actually works in Season 1 is a well-paced plot with legitimate twists, battle scenes where the stakes rise through evolutions rather than just we drew it fancier this time. The chemistry between Dan and Drago, the arc from annoyance to real partnership, is handled with care. Villains who actually have motives instead of running on I just want to destroy all worlds. There's one weakness, but it's fatal. It's a complete, self-contained story. The world is saved, it never asked for a sequel, but a franchise pulling in billions never stops for the sake of narrative integrity. Spin-offs, a manga adaptation called Bakutech, video games, collaborations, and yes, talk of a feature film has dragged on for years with nothing to show for it. Whether that ever becomes anything on the level of a successful live-action adaptation is a big question, given how many similar projects have turned into memes before the trailer even finished.
This is my city. These are my people. And if you think some...
Look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No.
Season 2 is a surprisingly solid follow-up. The action moves into the Bakugan world itself, the lore deepens, the tactical side of battles gets richer, the villains get more colorful, new characters get introduced, mechanical Bakugan show up, and old characters get cameos and follow-through. But this is exactly where the crack starts that eventually breaks the whole franchise. The balance between story and toy sales starts tipping toward the latter. Bakugan traps, battle gear pieces, constant evolutions for Helios and Drago. Every new mechanic in the show suspiciously lines up with what's on the store shelf. Still tolerable at this point. Not for long. The seasons that followed came out one after another, and you could feel the quality slipping. The plot bloated into absurdity. Alien invasions, artificially created Bakugan, storylines from a couple seasons back getting wiped and reset, and the number of enemies ballooning from 6 to 12 for no real reason, except that each one needed their own Bakugan, so a separate toy line with its own battle gear could be sold. Later on, the writers themselves, having completely lost control of the bloated cast, start killing characters off in bulk without any real dramatic build-up. More characters die in a single episode than in all of Season 1, and not for dramatic effect, just because there was nobody left to write for them. The budget problems made it worse. Less money went into production with each season, and the plot formula kept repeating itself so much that even loyal viewers were checked out by the fourth go-around. The finale of the first generation in 2012 landed as forced rather than emotional. Dan and Drago retire, handing things off to new heroes who never got launched at anywhere near the same scale. 2018 was the first attempt to revive it, a classic reboot mistake. They artificially de-aged the target audience, dropped the iconic theme song, simplified the game mechanics down to press button, get effect, and the Bakugan themselves started looking more like Transformers knockoffs than the fantasy creatures from the original. This isn't a disease unique to Bakugan. The Thundercats 2020 reboot went through the same thing. New, kid-friendly art style, shorter runtime, old fans didn't recognize it, and new fans didn't stick around. The pattern is universal. Studios try to please nostalgic adults and win over kids at the same time, and end up landing with neither audience. The 2018 reboot ran for 5 seasons and basically went unnoticed. Merch sales weren't even in the same universe as the original wave. 2023 brought a new version from Netflix, which today is essentially the official face of the brand. The tactical side of the battles is gone entirely. The story got even more watered down, and the visuals look like a generic streaming conveyor belt cartoon with zero personality. Scenes like Dan and Drago chatting over burgers at a diner sum up the franchise's decline perfectly, how it lost its own identity chasing safe content for streaming.
Let's do this, Drago!
It's go time.
It's brawl o'clock!
Open wide!
Oh, wait a minute!
That's also a recognizable pattern. When a rights holder hands a franchise off to a streaming service not for the sake of the story, but just to have something in the catalog. She-Ra's Netflix reboot suffered a similar fate. The animation was genuinely solid, but the show existed disconnected from its own fan base, aimed at a completely different demographic, leaving part of the original audience feeling like outsiders in their own fandom. The only difference is, She-Ra at least earned critical acclaim from fans. The 2023 Bakugan didn't even get that. If you had to boil down the general formula for how franchises like Bakugan decline, it'd look something like this. The original accidentally hits the right balance between sellable toy and compelling story. Success demands expansion. Sequels increasingly subordinate the story to merchandise production. Budgets shrink, deadlines tighten, plot beats start repeating. The franchise exhausts its audience before the rights holder is ready to let it go. Years later, after a pause, the studio decides not to tell a new story, but to recalibrate the old one for a safer, younger audience, losing both old and new viewers in the process. Bakugan isn't the only one who's walked this path. You can trace the same trajectory, from cult status to an endless string of forgettable reboots in Ben 10 and Winx Club, where every new toy wave demanded another cartoon season, regardless of whether the story actually needed one. The Bakugan fandom is still alive, nowhere near as massive as it was in the 2000s, but still visible. And that's already more than most franchises from that era can say, most of which have vanished into obscurity completely. The big question is whether Bakugan can get a reboot not just to be on streaming services, but to truly make the story worth returning to, like the second season did in 2009. So far, every new attempt has proven the opposite. The market has changed. The audience has grown up on the very things that originally inspired Bakugan, and trying to catch up to them with conveyor belt content is a dead end. The franchise deserves better.